negotiation. Nothing short of complete victory over the enemy.
Living History can now be yours to own on video. One source, the Columbia River Entertainment Group, brings you a stunning selection of special collector's edition video box sets, comprising the most comprehensive video library of military and aviation history ever assembled. This is Living History, yours to own, to experience, and to relive over and over again. These collections are brought to you by the world's leading supplier of special interest video box sets, the Columbia River Entertainment Group, giving you the highest quality and value at the best possible price. Available from leading retailers or visit our website at www.videocollectors.com.
This wind-swept airfield is 200 miles at sea. 600 miles from the inland targets its aircraft have just destroyed. The presence of this attack aircraft carrier has been felt half a world away from the United States. Here, in a land bordering on the China Sea, the peace and stability of a small nation is being threatened. A place and a people our country is committed to defend because we are dedicated to the idea that peace is worth preserving. 2 decades of world change have brought United States carriers to a troubled area where the future of Asia is being determined. This day, this moment. In other times of crisis, in other places, the appearance of our carriers was enough to maintain peace. But this has not always been so. Let us consider our own generation and its days of crisis. In response to sudden invasion in Korea, United States carriers moved overnight to furnish close air support to our outnumbered forces. Carrier aircraft patrolled the Taiwan Straits, while the nationalist Chinese forces moved the civilian population safely to Taiwan. Off the shores of Lebanon, while the Marines landed, the presence of our carriers close by and their aircraft overhead was enough to preserve stability and order in that small nation. During the crisis in the Congo, an aircraft carrier served NATO forces as a depot for jet fuel supplies. From various places on the global sea, the United States moved our naval forces into Cuban waters. Russians and Cubans, intent on establishing missile bases on our doorstep, sensed their purpose. A show of strength was sufficient to keep the peace. And so it has been that in each emergency, no matter where on the face of the globe, United States carriers have responded, each bringing a variety of weapons for any kind of war, but using only what was needed to accomplish the job at hand. To be ready now, this instant, are the standing orders of America's attack carriers and of all who serve upon them. 4,500 men comprise this special purpose community. Engineers and doctors, pilots, steam fitters, postal clerks, aircraft mechanics, and firemen. From captain to seaman, they make this ship run. In the old sailing ships, Man was the key to power in a visible and tangible way. He trimmed the sails, manned the guns, carried the powder, boarded the enemy in hand-to-hand encounter. In the carrier, man is still the key to power, but he uses more complex tools and more exotic skills. You work 14 hours a day, 20 when it's necessary, sometimes to work alone, sometimes as part of a team. There is easier work ashore, but here at least you are part of the most advanced technology of our age. Men in jobs on the flight deck are identified by color. Young men shunt million-dollar aircraft about the deck, handle tons of explosives, pump millions of pounds of jet fuel into aircraft that leave and return to the deck 9 or 10 times a day. Mechanics in brown and green work from dawn to dawn, keeping 80 planes ready to fly and fight. Flight deck directors in yellow arrange all 80 exactly where and when needed for fixing, fueling, flying, and fighting around the clock.
That should be no problem. I ought to be able to...
And the greenies don't have anything.
I can stick them in here or on the elevator. But that's a good place for that floater back there. Hangar flight. On this next respot, we're going to need 402, 310, and 408.
10 minutes to line, 10 minutes. Hey, Dave, did you get that 409 in your report on tanker yet? 409, did you get a report on tanker yet?
On the heavies.
How about calling him?
Hey, Chief Williams? Okay, will you tell them that we'll fly 713, we'll send 737 down below.
6 is down, 506 is down.
Event 2 Bravo. Our mission will be an escort and flak suppression, a coordinated attack composed of 4 A6s and 8 A4Ds. Now, some of the things that we should be ever mindful about in this escort is a good lookout doctor.
They have all the information on the board here. All right, now we'll get into the actual attack portion of the flight. We'll be proceeding into the target on a heading of 090.
The briefing is anything but brief. There is a great deal of information to impart. Just one of 10 going on in ready rooms throughout the ship.
Roll out and proceed on ahead, and this will be the airplane on which the others will rendezvous.
Man remains, as ever, the measure. The pilots depend upon their own precise skills and just as fully on those who back them up. Because the airfield can move, and because others like it are at work in other oceans, it can deliver force or persuasion to 85% of the Earth's land area. Nowhere is there a target its aircraft cannot reach. From a standing start, 20 tons of aircraft reach flying speed in 2 seconds flat. Every 30 seconds, another plane is sent aloft. 16 in quick succession. you work your way through the valleys and over the ridges in daylight or in the dark of night. The intruder will do this and find the target in all kinds of weather, for its radar system sees the terrain when the pilot cannot see it. The Skyhawk, small for its bomb-toting ability, sorts out two trucks from the enormity of mountain and wilderness, precisely. And as a kind of reminder that age is no reflection on the warrior, the propeller-driven Sky Raider, the workhorse fighter of Korean days, has proven adept at ground support in jungle warfare. The Phantom, fast and versatile, will climb straight up from the deck to stand off an attack or penetrate deep to inland targets. These are the ingredients of an airborne strike. Deadly and dangerous. Daily and nightly chores for carrier aircraft. To the striking range of its aircraft is added the speed of the carrier itself. With a cruising range of 500 miles a day, it can draw into striking distance in a few hours. When peace is threatened, it can appear, ready on arrival, and stay for a show of strength or as a poised threat. When the danger is past, it can withdraw, taking all its self-sufficiency with it. The approach of the carrier on-board delivery plane is a welcome sight, for it brings the mail from home, priority air freight, and occasional visitors. Within minutes, the outgoing mail will be loaded and on its way back. With this most vital supply of all, the reminder that no man is an island. Far below the flight deck, where hull and keel converge, the man-made tropics are as hot as any jungle. There is no night or day. Just a tungsten-lit sky full of valves and gauges.
Let's
20 feet below the waterline, trained hands control one of the 4 engines that move the carrier across the sea at 30 knots.
Okay.
4 boilers and 4,500 men need fresh water in great quantities. Some are responsible for its quality, everyone for its conservation. Fresh bread is a sort of time reference in this city where 13,000 meals are served a day. Eggs and bacon do not summon the morning for everyone. If you have pork chops or chicken as the main course, you know the day is well advanced even though you may have just risen from sleep. A fighting ship is not a democracy. It is a tool democracy uses to survive. It is, however, a community, providing all the services for health and physical well-being that can be found ashore. The work of the ship can be hot and tedious, but there is always a chance to banish time and space, to visit a world of your own choosing. Noise and commotion are part of the air you breathe. You give up your privacy to the greater aims of a nation that extols the dignity of the individual. You drop dead tired into the sack, down here where night and day are the same. Where you learn to ignore the violence on the roof overhead. It takes a bit of doing to work a man into this exacting system, and only responsible men can make it work. The responsibility of one man for another, of each man for the ship. And so you work and train. You reach the point where you and the ship are tuned to fight. Here at home, the Independence prepares to relieve a fighting ship on the line. From 50 states they come, all trained to do their job, from cooking meals to operating the most complex electronic equipment, from repairing tires to launching missiles. The materials of war come from the nation that has created this mobile, potent weapon. The contributions of agriculture, industry, and research go on board. A large segment of the population has contributed its skill and its wealth to create this force. Tradition has it that bands be playing and flags be flying when fighting men put to sea. That is the framework of farewell. But this is the true language of long separation. Of 4,500 men separates from the mainland, moving out upon the oceans that make islands of all our continents. But with all that is given by a people to create and sustain this expression of prestige and power, some here will give their lives. We have come 12,000 miles. The ship has crossed the equator twice. Cape Town and Madagascar and Sumatra are far behind. Other ships join up, and we arrive at Yankee Station off North Vietnam. The limited war we have come to fight is just over the horizon in rice paddy and rainforest. In the weeks to come, the carrier will launch its aircraft against targets that melt into the jungle and take advantage of the weather. This moment is the culmination of all training, though it go back through all the years of a man's career. Back indeed to the primal education that qualified him to be here now, when ingenuity and courage count for as much as his airplane or its weapons or the odds on survival. On your way to mountain and jungle, missile sites and anti-aircraft guns. A radar man in the carrier's CIC tracks you all the way. Information reaches here from every part of the ship, and from the Hawkeye, whose radar monitors all aircraft en route to the target and serves as the carrier's early warning system. still in some remote place. Yet there is anxiety here, too. Sometimes it is tougher to wait than fight. Nature is a kind of natural enemy to what is proposed here. That men can find this moving postage stamp airfield. That other men can plan their approach to the deck. That men can land here. That this can be done time after time in an environment of wind and wave and weather and human fallibility. Over the years, the role of the attack carrier has been a changing one. In this period of crisis for one small nation, the force of this weapon has been unleashed. In other instances, it has not. Over the years, it has allowed the United States to respond to the unexpected, to bring this weapon to the support of friends or to confront potential enemies. The attack carrier exists so these men who fly and fight might be effective. That this can be done is the miracle of men who regard each other as shipmates and professionals. Around-the-clock flying for weeks on end will consume tons and tons of explosives and jet fuel. Carriers on the line take brief moments to bring their food and fuel and ammunition reserves to capacity. Men are still needed to carry the powder. These great ships, some preparing for warfare, some engaged in combat, some representing our national interest in distant places, stand ready to carry American power where it is needed, when it is needed. There will soon be another mission, and then another, each one reflecting the ordeal of all who serve upon the ship. Those who direct the course of the vessel, operate the radar, who plot the battle and maintain the equipment. Those who time after time rise from the deck to meet the enemy, no matter where.
A task force or a task group is a group of specially selected ships designed to carry out a special task or mission. Now, in the case of Task Force 77, we have 3 attack carriers and supporting destroyers and cruisers.
Colonel, the 8 o'clock surface now shows low-level convergence into the upper area with the high steel building up in here and the weather.
We are all seamen here, and the weather is of prime importance to us. To me, the commander, the daily weather briefing provides an indication as to what the men in this task force and the ships and planes are going to have to cope with in carrying out our mission. And we're all of us here living in ships, scattered over hundreds of miles at sea, doing one job and working together.
This task force, the men of the aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk. Lieutenant Ernest Brazil speaking.
And no matter how many times you're catted off this carrier, you just never get used to the feel of a catapult shot. It's something that can never grow old, something you can never become accustomed to. It's somewhat akin to being hit in the chest by a Mack truck. Yet still, it's a very fine feeling because you know everything's working properly and you're going to get off the end of the aircraft carrier flying.
Those catapults out there are my responsibility, and without them, the Kitty Hawk is nothing but a hotel, floating hotel for 5,000 men. When you're on that flight deck, you got to have eyes in the back of your head. Once we get on the flight deck and start operating with the high noise level we have, we do most of our talking by hands and by lip movements. Just what you can see topside is only half of what is going on this catapult. The people's below decks are just as important as the people's topside, and it's just one big team altogether. As you'll see, the flight deck crew hooking up the airplane, you have 5 men working together, and they have to work together or they're going to kill each other. I personally worked and trained all of my crew on the Kitty Hawk to my own satisfaction. In almost 100,000 aircraft shots, we have never put an airplane in the water on account of a malfunction of the catapult itself.
Among the young crew of this floating city is a solid sprinkling of old-timers. Commander Malcolm Guess is one.
As a squadron executive officer, it's been my privilege and opportunity to observe these young pilots in action. We ask them to do more today than they ever were required to do at my lifetime at the stage of training the kids are going through. They continually, daily, are asked to do a terrific job, and they complete this job all on their own.
Ever since I've been on a ship, of course, the thing that's always impressed me so much is the hidden talent, or the guy that's off on the side that's doing a job that nobody ever really pays any attention to until he fails to do that job. And that's where I was referring to you about the using a very good example, since you actually can see it from standing up on the bridge of the chap. All he does every day is take a bunch of tow bars, and they're not really light. They're made out of aluminum, good type of alloy, and put them on this cart, and all he does is pull them forward where they're available to put on an airplane. Well, the reason that his job's so important is, you notice, as our airplanes land, they taxi forward and they park them up on the bow. Well, they park them, and they park them at about a 45-degree angle. They park there, and then as they pulled out, well, prior to being pulled out, of course, they're being gassed. As soon as they're gassed, they want to be able to pull that airplane right out of that spot, pull it right aft, as soon as recovery over with, and park it. Well, they can't pull it aft unless the tow bar's on it. The object is to catch a bunch of airplanes in as short a period of time as you can, and to launch a bunch of airplanes in as short a period of time as you have. They don't get the glory and the stuff of the other people out there on the flight deck where the action is, where it's nice to watch. Boy, there goes an airplane. Look at that. Boy, isn't that dangerous? It catches the eye. These people don't catch the eye, but their job, in my opinion, is just as important as the people in the action.
310 Airborne. Falcon 310 Airborne, 36.
The air boss sits up on high, seeing it all happen. A carrier can launch scores of aircraft in less than an hour. Thousands of men hurry around the flight and hangar decks in apparent confusion. But there is no confusion. The air boss is boss, and his flight deck control center is a good symbol of the order woven into the wild hustle of a carrier vessel. Every aircraft has a place to be every second of an operation.
A7's to starboard, whale on the point.
Behind the carrier, it's plane guard destroyer, waiting, in case the worst happens. If the worst doesn't happen, they throw in a dummy named Oscar and rehearse for it. That's their task in the task force, to wait, to be ready. Commander Bert Myatt, Jr., skipper, USS Black.
Despite all the electronic equipment we have in this ship for this type of work, in the destroyer Navy, seamanship is still all important. This type work has special meaning to me in that I was an aviator myself one time. I went into the water off of a carrier on a dark night off coast of Korea. This was off Incheon, and the night before the Incheon invasion in September 1950. So I know how the fellows feel up there, and this is why we put forth a little more effort to do a real good job in this plane guarding work.
They wait for months at a time. One man with the shark rifle. The sea and time flowing past them, while on the big buddy they're guarding, a continuous non-stop drama is being played. That is the carrier's task.
All right, gents, don't forget to use your pink code word cards for the day.
Our dependency on other people starts right here in the ready room before a mission. We depend upon the photo reconnaissance people who go in over the beach unarmed, take pictures of our targets, bring them back out here. They're developed, put into the computers. We have the people flying the electronic reconnaissance missions. They also get the same type of information, and then this is all correlated together in the computers. And then our air intelligence people down at the other end of the ship correlate all this together, work out our missions for us, and we go down there and pick up this information that we need before we actually go out on a mission. We come down here to the ready room, and we have all this information right in front of us, all laid out here.
Okay, gents, you've had the rundown on the target, you've got the route, and how we're getting in there, standard formation on the way down. Once we get ready to make the turn in to go coast in, we'll pick up a standard tactical formation, get it outspread nice and wide, and I'll call my throttle setting there, and we'll make our run in. Remember to keep the bird moving. Hadn't been a lot of fire, but we don't want to take any chances on it.
Okay, when we're ready for our mission, we start off by putting on right around 70 pounds worth of flight gear. The survival vest carries your radio, your flares, your dye marker, your survival kit, a small medical kit, water bottles. These are all the things that you really need to survive if you're going to be down in the jungle for any length of time. Of course, you strap on a .38 caliber pistol on your hip, and you're ready to go on up to the flight deck, get out there and do it.
We actually wear so much gear that at times you have the appearance of a big old teddy bear. You pretty well waddle up to the airplane, and at some point in the future, I think you can foresee a derrick to just pick up a pilot and sit him in the cockpit.
The largest carrier is no more than a moving patch in a heaving liquid void. The landing signal officer, the LSO, is therefore an indispensable man.
If you give me the choice between one of the richest insurance policies that you can give me or give me a good LSO, I'll take the LSO any day. Admittedly, every once in a while, you're going to have what we call a hairy one, or, boy, that's a wild one type pass. Knock that off, don't do it again type thing. This occurs periodically, but it's nothing you accept. It's something you try to correct. The LSO picks him up approximately 3/4 of a mile.
Roger, interlaunch 1030. Recovery complete, recovery complete.
The carriers of the task force are bound to their supporting ships by the commander's will and a network of electromagnetic signals. The purely human bond is the logistics helicopter. Commander Donald Garrett.
As a log helo pilot, I see a great deal of Task Force 77. As a matter of fact, I think I see more of it than anybody else on a day-to-day basis. We fly from carrier to carrier and from ship to ship, all within Task Force 77. Some of our people out there they used to go for weeks, for months without mail. But one of the most important things to, I would say, the average sailor out there now, when it comes to the log helo, is the daily mail. The ships that we live on out here come and go, however we stay. You might say we're nomads of the Tonkin Gulf. We are the only airline that I know of that has to deliver people to their destination while we're still flying. And we get to see them all. We get to know their personalities. And the ships do have personalities, just like people.
The log helo gives a little and takes a little. Refueling on the fly makes every little ship a filling station in the China Sea. The landing pad on USS Stanley is at the very tip of the task force's perimeter, more than 100 miles north of Kitty Hawk. Stanley, a 3-year-old frigate, is the picket ship, the task force's advance warning ship and advance guard. Captain William M.A. Green commands.
Mr. Jeanette, bring the ship to 25 knots.
Aye, sir. All engines ahead flank indicate 175 RPM for 25 knots.
Captain Green.
Stanley is a ship of less than 3 years old. She has invested in her, from the people of the United States, $100 million worth of ship and $200 million worth of ship's company. Stanley, in her position as the power-as ship, is the eyes of the 7th Fleet, which means she's the furthest north in the Tonkin Gulf and has the ability to detect whether or not a hostile aircraft or surface vessel might be approaching the 7th Fleet forces. This ship's company is made up of what we call the top drawer variety of the new breed of people. They are highly skilled and trained in electronics, which is awfully important to the concept of present-day warfare.
Sophisticated Stanley may be, but she still needs the hands of a seaman. Bosun's mate, second class, Richard Hanley.
As modern as this ship is, there's 2 rates that she cannot do without. That's her bosun mates and her engineering department. As bosun mates, we handle the ship as they handled ships of old, with lines and all sorts of associated equipment. The 2 that work together the closest are your bosun mates and your engineers. Your engineers keep the ship running, they keep us with fresh water, they keep us with fuel, and they supply the speed. We as bosun mates keep the ship maintenance-wise up to par, keep all of our topside areas up to date with gear, and keep everything running and working in working order. We handle everything such as refueling and high lines.
A fleet of supply vessels, a task force in itself, mothers the ships on station. UNREP, underway replenishment, sees to it that no ship falls short of anything it needs. The 2 ships steam side by side as fuel goes into Stanley's tanks. On the signal bridge, a brisk trade goes on in movies. Old, new, any movie you haven't seen lately. There are many ways to board a ship. Some of them not very interesting. Some of them a bit too interesting. Arriving by High Line is in the second classification. Stanley's escort destroyer, USS Porterfield, has come alongside to pick up a medical officer for a routine visit. It is the doctor's first voyage in the bosun's chair. Porterfield now has a doctor in the house.
All ahead, 2/3 indicate turns for 10 knots.
All ahead, 2/3 indicate turns for 10 knots right there. Right, the 24.
Stanley has another visitor, a Russian trawler. Captain Green.
Trawler, the Gidrofon is the present one in the Gulf. Should be on station for some time, we suppose. And they look like an array of electronics, antennas, and transmission equipment. Soviet elite ships that position themselves in the Tonkin Gulf among our naval forces have a right to be here. This is international waters. Our guidelines are pretty much to be alert to him, but not to interfere, of course, with his operation. Same time, not to let him interfere with our operations. I want to keep the Soviet trawler Gidrofon to port just for its meanness. He's been trying to maneuver around to see our starboard side, and really, I don't know what he'll gain, but we'll keep him interested anyhow by, if I continue to pass him to port as he stays around my area of operation here.
Stanley is full of devices that might interest Soviet intelligence. Her Combat Intelligence Center has the job of alerting the entire task force to any hint of threat. Captain Green.
It's a time of quick response now, a matter of seconds. And that is the atmosphere in which the commanding officer of a ship of this sophistication operates. You know, you might ask me, what level do you stop letting people make decisions or use their judgment? We don't stop at any level. We even have petty officers of the Blue Jacket, first class and second class petty officers, who communicate back and forth with other ships without ever consulting me before they communicate or consulting the evaluator. They've got to in order to keep, we say, real-time information flowing.
I am turning control over console number 3.
Radar man first class Arthur Russell.
This is the bar cap barrier combat air patrol, first line of defense for Task Force 77. We are providing control, much the same as around a civilian airport, with one important exception. MiG air bases are approximately 30 miles north of this aircraft, and at any time they may venture out. If they did, it will be my job to vector the bar cap into a position to meet the incoming raids.
Passage 401, this is on over. Okay, 401 up.
And working with these pilots every day, pretty soon it gets to be on a first name basis, and then eventually it leads up to a nickname basis. Pilots and the controllers all have nicknames. Some of them are very descriptive, such as the Hawk, Happy. I acquired the nickname of the Bear initially, and after a period of time it was shortened even further to the Teddy Bear. I'm known as the Teddy Bear of the Tonkin Gulf. These bar cap pilots are the world's greatest. It is often difficult sitting down here, watching a couple of pips on a scope, especially after getting to know several of them personally after visits to the carrier, and then all of a sudden you have a pip disappear on you. It's a very shattering experience every time we lose one, particularly when you know someone personally.
Just about a week ago, Ernie and I had a little incident where we had a double engine flame out. We had to eject from the aircraft. We were about halfway down to Da Nang. We had another F4 on our wing. course, he was right there to make all the radio broadcasts. We were in the parachutes, and we hit the water, and one of the first things I did was to pull out my little personal survival radius. As soon as we got in the water, I was in full contact with the other aircraft at all times. Just to prove how quick these people did work and how well their teamwork was, we were in the water from the time we jumped out of the airplane to the time we were on board the helicopter on our way to the USS Hornet. It was a total of, I'd figure, less than 25 minutes.
A task force is a collection of men and ships at sea. And the sea is full of wind and rain and weather, and days and weeks and months passing. Many Americans no longer think of themselves as a seafaring people. The prairies, the mountains, the wilderness are more our historic images. Yet, Leif Erikson, Columbus, the Pilgrims, the great waves of immigrants came by sea, and Americans fought the most decisive battles in history in the Pacific. One of our greatest stories, Moby Dick, is about the sea, and today we are still farers of the sea.
This is a stand-down day out here at Yankee Station. This is the first one we've had this cruise. Stand-down day is a 24-hour period when we get a chance to relax. There are no flight ops for this time. Of course, they always have to have a fighter manned up. And unfortunately, today, Ernie and I drew the alert. So here we are. While everybody else is down relaxing, we're up here in our airplane just in case we have to be launched, in case we're ever intercepted out here.
Why does the bird go on singing? Why does the sighs of my cry? Don't say no, the end of the world, it ended with the bird.
Hi, people. Today's Easter Sunday. I just got a letter from you, so I figured I'd write home and let you know what's happening. We're sitting out here off coast Vietnam.
Now, here's a tradition that probably did not come down from the old days of wooden ships and iron men. The catapult officer has ended his tour of sea duty, and he's going home. But not before he commands one more launch from the deck of Kitty Hawk. As the days turn into months, it is easy to forget the perils of the sea. A man coming too close to a jet exhaust has been blown over the side. 5,000 shipmates wait, each suddenly aware of his own mortality. Here is the young sailor saved from the sea.
When I was falling, I didn't have much time to think trivial thoughts. As the ship went past me, I was spotted by one of the watches, and a smoke pot was thrown in the water. I was only in the water for about 10 minutes after the fantail of the ship passed me when a motor whaleboat off the USS Robinson picked me up. Came back on board the ship, landed in the helo that picked me up off the destroyer. I looked out the door. The first thing I saw was all of the CAT crew that the CAT officer would let come over, the men that weren't actually involved in a launch at the time. It was a real good feeling to know that so many of my friends had turned out to see me come back on the ship.
Admiral Cousins.
You have a mixture here of old pros and but a large part, perhaps 75% or more, are men and young officers who are on their first combat tour, their first enlistment in the Navy in the case of the men. Nevertheless, it's always gratifying to me and I think surprising to many people to see how the young men pitch in, take their share of responsibility. The young fellows who last year were
on a high school football team or working at a gas station this year out here have a vital part in this team, whether they're down in the engine room working in a shaft alley or tending a boiler, or up working in the arresting gear on the flight deck. They're all in a responsible place, and for many guys it's the most responsibility they'll ever have.
Captain Green of the Stanley.
But I believe this is a fairly good summary of commitment to cause. And we have in Navy ships a commonality of cause, a commonality of purpose. I don't believe any other profession can really say that. Everybody has an objective with purpose, an objective for which they stand and which they are destined. But I believe in the Navy ships, even unlike other military forces, there is a commonality of purpose, there's a camaraderie that I can't believe others can develop. But again, when you say shipmate and that ship's mission, they fit hand in hand, and I think we will usually go in without holding back one little bit of our effort, individually and as a crew.
A collection of men in ships and planes. Young men and old pros. Shipmates a long way from home. A task force of the United States Navy.
The attack aircraft carrier. A floating airfield capable of carrying and operating 6 squadrons of the latest aircraft, over 90 planes. An airfield that can move at speeds well in excess of 30 knots, appear where it's needed in any part of the world. A giant aircraft launching platform loaded with ultra-modern electronic equipment and devastating weapons. She's a vital link in our national security, a potential for power, for peace, for war. But still, just a potential, until her crew is on board. Then, and only then, is her potential realized. Attack aircraft carrier. She means a lot of things to a lot of people. To the air group, an airfield, a home away from home. To the crew, a place to work and live. She shows a face of reassurance and friendship to friends, a face of controlled power to others. And she provides a flexible, wide-ranging addition to the country's strength. Her reason for being is to get her 90 aircraft into position to destroy a given target, no matter how remote or well defended. This is her job, and the job of the men aboard her.
Stand by to start the A4s and the F4s. Check chocks, tie down, fire bottles. Loose gear about the deck. Helmets on, goggles down. Stand clear of jet intakes and exhaust. Stop the A4s and the F4s.
The flight deck,
The pilot's in the hands of the flight deck crew from the time he starts engines to the instant the catapult lets go. You've never seen more precise teamwork than these guys show. And you've never seen more rugged working conditions. Even with their Mickey Mouse helmets, the jet engine noise is overpowering. And the heat. You get out on that deck, working with those jet planes on a 100-degree day like you get in the South Pacific or the Mediterranean. And you feel like you're frying. There's always a 30-knot wind down the deck. They walk leaning into it. Tough job? Yes, there's a word for it. Hairy. A mixture of hard work, uncomfortable conditions, and always the pressure of knowing a man's life depends on your job. A lot of them are only kids, 18, 19 years old. But they're the best. They have to be. Every pilot's life depends on them. And they send these planes off to ship like clockwork. Plane in the air every 30 seconds. And at the precise minute they're scheduled to be over target, they'll be there. Between every flight operation, detailed plans are made to shift aircraft between hangar and flight deck. Position planes in the right order for the next launch. Ensure proper fueling and maintenance. There's not a whole lot of time because recovery of aircraft returning from a mission is usually scheduled to follow a launch within minutes.
I know let's put last one. Let's put one in on back there. Let's get these airplanes. I want to put in, right?
When air operations are underway, the huge hangar deck, almost as large as the flight deck, is busy around the clock. Here, aircraft are repaired and maintained. The job is a tough one, but it gets done. These maintenance men work as hard as anybody in the ship. If it weren't for them and the extra effort they throw into the job, the planes just wouldn't be ready to fly. When the ship is conducting flight operations, keeping planes in the air from 7 in the morning to 11 or 12 at night, many times 5 or 6 days in a row, any minor maintenance or repairs must be done quickly. And these guys stay ahead of the game, conducting even major repairs like fast engine changes. The only way to do it is to work 12, 16, 20 hours a day. Catch a nap when you can, wherever you can. And eat a sandwich somebody brings you if there's no time to make the chow line. The peacetime Navy operates at maybe 15 to 20% below full strength. But when flying practice missions, taking part in a NATO exercise, or involved in a conflict like Vietnam, well, it's all out. Everything goes. And these men have to deliver, even though they may be shorthanded. It's a tremendous job, keeping these modern planes ready to fly. Things have changed a lot since World War II and Korea. One of today's high-performance aircraft with advanced electronic equipment and the most lethal armament can do the job of several 1940 or 1950 vintage planes. We have more going for us than ever before, but it makes maintenance and repair a bigger problem. And the technicians have to be a lot sharper. These men are top-notch, real pros. They keep them ready, ready to fly, ready to fight, and ready to complete their mission.
Stand by to recover aircraft. Stand by to recover aircraft.
All unnecessary personnel stand clear of the port catwalk to land near the corral and board South Island back away from the mountain.
Landing signal officer, ready. Arresting wires, in position. The pilot's landing aid system, on. Bringing these jets aboard at speeds up to 140 knots is another tough operation for the flight deck crew. Here, too, the precision teamwork under difficult conditions is remarkable. And the crew takes them on as fast as 2 every 60 seconds. Sometimes a plane misses the last wire and goes around again. Sometimes the problem is more serious. That's why an emergency crew is always there, and it's a good feeling to know they are. They're trained to go into a burning plane, get the pilot out safely, put out the fire, and quickly clear the deck. Great guys, all of them. After every recovery, planes must be refueled, rearmed, and respotted for the next launch. And always there's that pressure of time. The pressure of time, the commitment to be on target with pinpoint accuracy and precision. It's something every man on an attack carrier lives with from launch to recovery. Especially the pilot. Carrier flying takes real professionals because it's a unique, demanding job. After every flight, one of the first things pilots do is check with the landing signal officer. He's the one the pilots depend on to evaluate their landings. Once in a while, there's a little controversy over that evaluation, but it's all settled with a videotape playback. Every landing is covered by TV cameras. It gives them a chance to see what they did and to plan any changes that will make them more proficient. These guys are always trying to do a better job. When a carrier's on station, a pilot makes 2, sometimes 3 flights a day, including a night flight. It's a rugged 24 hours. It's a job even to put on all that gear, let alone fly in it for 2 or 3 hours. But the pilots need it, all of it. It's still a tough way to dress for work. You know, it's not like it used to be in the old days, where a pilot jumped in a plane and took off. Flying off a carrier. It's just a job to these guys, so they say. But they'll also tell you it's a kick they wouldn't trade for anything in the world. No question. They love it. Planes in the air, on their way to the target. And the attack carrier's potential is realized. And this potential includes attack bombers capable of carrying nuclear and conventional weapons with the supersonic speed, range, and maneuverability to penetrate the stiffest defenses and deliver a devastating blow to the most remote targets. And low-level attack bombers capable of providing effective aerial support for ground troops. On these planes, the pilot is teamed with a highly trained bombardier navigator who operates the ultimate in electronic blind flying aids. Regardless of the type of aircraft, frequent practice missions prepare the crews for the real thing. To be effective, the attack carrier must have a defensive capability equal to its attack potential. The answer to this is fighter aircraft and early detection. Fighter aircraft to provide air cover, air superiority over any enemy attacking planes. For early detection, carrier-based radar picket planes stationed in a huge circle around the ship. And the long-ranging advanced design ship's radars, which keep up a constant search for unidentified aircraft. The data from these 2 radar sources, fed to the ship's Combat Information Center, provide the ability to detect enemy planes hundreds of miles away, making it almost impossible for enemy aircraft to penetrate within striking range of the ship without being detected. When an attacking force is discovered, pilots flying the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world streak toward the target at speeds over 1,600 miles per hour, fast enough to engage the enemy long before he can do any damage. The carrier's modern complex computer system, the Naval Tactical Data System, works out fighter deployment and intercept problems in millionths of a second. Allows the Combat Information Center to evaluate any threat and vector fighter aircraft to the target. In this day of modern warfare, enemy aircraft or missiles may approach a task force at speeds of thousands of miles an hour, and simultaneous attacks from several directions at once are to be expected. Some fighters carry such advanced electronic equipment and weapons that a second crew member is needed, a radar intercept officer who works closely with the pilot. Together, they're capable of intercepting and destroying enemy aircraft under all weather conditions. They may never even glimpse the target. If necessary, a plane's range can be extended by air-to-air refueling. Specially designed clip-on belly tanks transform many carrier planes into tankers. And if a plane returns to the carrier low on fuel, these tanker planes are always available. When a mission is completed and it's time to go home, the floating airfield has changed position because it's always on the move. But it's where the pilots expect it to be. Attack carrier. She's a place of business for the crew. A sometime name in the paper to the public. A job well done to the shipyard worker. A most welcome sight to a returning pilot. She presents many faces to many people. Perhaps the most significant face she shows is to a potential enemy. To a hostile country, the attack aircraft carrier is an unwelcome sight, and for good reason. One of the most difficult to neutralize weapons is the attack carrier. It's always on the move, difficult to keep up with, hard to pinpoint, and hazardous to attack. What does a potential enemy do? Well, he goes to a limited war concept. Korea, for example. The enemy finds himself confronted with the attack carrier. Aerial cover in support for amphibious landings at Ponang and Incheon. Cover for the successful evacuation of 100,000 troops and their equipment at the Chosin Reservoir. Even when the enemy captured the airfields in South Korea, he didn't achieve air superiority. Carrier pilots were right in there, flying thousands of sorties. after Korea, 1955. Attack carriers cover the evacuation of the Tonkin Islands. 1956. Cover during the Suez Crisis for the evacuation of 1,700 United States citizens. 1957. A show of force in the Eastern Mediterranean. 1958. Quemoy and Matsu. Simultaneously in Lebanon, carriers provide air cover for Marine Corps amphibious landings. 1960. Carriers off the Congo for possible evacuation of citizens and on the alert during the Berlin crisis. 1961. Off Guatemala and Nicaragua to help prevent any invasion from the sea. 1962. Cuban Missile Crisis. Quarantine and the readiness to aid in forcing missile removal if necessary. Plus, constant surveillance of inbound ships. Plus, constant surveillance of Cuba itself. And 1964, the Tonkin Gulf and Vietnam. Crisis after crisis, carrier aviation has met the challenge. The advent of nuclear-powered carriers and escort vessels has made the carrier task force even more mobile, even more frustrating to an enemy. As ships and planes become more and more sophisticated, they will demand more and more of the men who serve in them. And this challenge, too, will be met. Night or day, east or west, no matter where an enemy may initiate a crisis, no matter how remote and inaccessible, no matter how far from a United States land base, a face of our nation will appear: the attack aircraft carrier. And the men who make her what she is.
This ceremony marked the end of an era. The crowd knew it. As they gathered at the Naval Air Station, They were in a sentimental, quiet, nostalgic mood. The guest of honor was retiring from naval aviation today. After more than 20 years of distinguished service, the old warrior of countless skies was being given a final tribute and a last farewell. But the honored guest today was not a fighting man of the United States Navy. It was an airplane, not an ordinary plane, but a magnificent aircraft that had served our nation in peace and war for a record-breaking 2 decades. The officers and men gathered here are saying goodbye to an old friend, the last Sky Raider in Navy service. The sturdy, prop-driven attack bomber, affectionately known as a SPAD, was about to be piped over for the flight to its final destination, the Naval Aviation Museum at Pensacola, Florida. Douglas Sky Raiders rewrote the history of close air support. They were the first aircraft ever to carry their own weight in bomb loads. They became one of the best known, most effective propeller-driven aircraft the world would ever see. For more years than any other plane in aviation history, they were the guts and the backbone of the United States Navy. Yet, this versatile eagle of naval aviation came within a whisker of not being born at all. The story of the Sky Raider began in our nation's capital in 1944. The Second Great War was coming to an end, closing the book on the most extensive campaign of all time by carrier-borne aircraft. Up to that time, the Douglas Dauntless, designated the SBD, had been and in fact still was the Navy's foremost attack aircraft. But the war in the Pacific had changed so much that the need for a new attack bomber was becoming evident. 3 top Douglas engineers attended a meeting in Washington where they learned 2 things. First, all further modifications on the SBD were canceled. Second, they discovered 2 other companies had been asked to submit proposals for a new attack aircraft. The Douglas engineers went to their hotel and worked through the night on preliminary sketches of the new Sky Raider. The following morning was the deadline for any consideration. The sketches intrigued the Navy enough that Douglas was allowed to enter the competition and eventually was awarded the contract. In 9 short months, the Sky Raider evolved from lines on a blueprint to a plane. Early in March 1945, the prototype was test flown. From the first moment, the Navy knew they had a winner. What they had no way of knowing at that time was that they had a champion. The Navy had been searching for a new dive bomber, attack aircraft, to meet the changing tactical and operational requirements. The Sky Raider gave them all that and much more. Within the span of the next 12 years, Douglas Aircraft Company was to manufacture 3,180 Sky Raiders in 7 versions and 28 subversions. January 1948, the USS Coral Sea embarked on her maiden voyage. The first launch and recovery ever attempted from the flight deck of the newly christened carrier was accomplished by a Sky Raider. It was only fitting and proper for the Sky Raider to join the Coral Sea as she sailed for the first time. For, as fate would ordain some 20 years later, the same carrier, and the very same squadron would witness the last combat cruise of the Never Say Die Sky Raiders. But before that day was to arrive, the Sky Raider proved to be the muscle in the Navy's air arm. She earned her nickname, the Pedigreed Pulverizer, as the Sky Raider served with distinction in 2 major wars. Striking with deadly payloads from the carrier USS Valley Forge, Sky Raiders blasted targets in Korea on July 3rd, 1950, just 3 days after the start of the United Nations action. From then on, hardly a day passed that Sky Raiders didn't strike. Since the Korean War, Sky Raider squadrons on board America's 15 attack carriers have been on the line ready to perform in every Cold War situation where naval power has been brought to bear. Lebanon, Suez, Matsu, Quemoy, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and Vietnam. During this period, the old Sky Raider managed to stay on the varsity, while 5 different types of jet attack aircraft have made the team, been benched, and eventually have had their numbers retired from the carrier aircraft inventory. The Sky Raider's longevity on the first team of strike aircraft is tacit acknowledgement of her outstanding performance over the years. Above all, the Sky Raider was versatile, equipped to perform 4 major missions: day attack, all-weather attack, airborne early warning, and countermeasures. Some versions of the Sky Raiders could, however, through flight deck adaptation kits, convert into a VIP or high-density passenger aircraft, or an ambulance, or cargo plane, or an anti-submarine search craft, a target tow, and even a tanker. In her primary role of attack aircraft, the spectrum of usable weapons ranges from torpedoes to rockets, to cannons, to bullets to bombs, including nuclear weapons. A single Sky Raider is a half-dozen airstrikes all by itself. The Sky Raider demonstrated that it was the first plane capable of carrying greater than its own structural weight in armament. The truest method of measuring any plane is to talk to the men who fly her.
I'm Lieutenant J.G. Chuck Tome from Aurora, Illinois.
I'm Lieutenant J.G. Robert Hagan from Long Beach, California.
Do you know what a SPAD is? This is a SPAD, A1 Sky Raider. We call it the SPAD probably only because it's got the prop on the front and it's an old airplane. But that's a pilot's pet name for it.
And it's rather an antique in the days of the fast jets. So consequently, we wanted to dub the aircraft a certain very distinctive name, and so we named it the SPAD.
Oh, we really love them. I think there isn't a SPAD pilot in the fleet that's not flying it that really wanted them. Like in my case, I wanted them before I even came into the Navy, so I would have really been disappointed flying any other bird.
Well, in the Korean War, the SPAD was used generally as a strike aircraft. In other words, if a group of soldiers, Marines are on the ground and they're in trouble, there's a couple of ways that they can help themselves, either through artillery or air. And this is where the SPAD came in quite a bit in the Korean War, in the mission of getting in there real close to the troops and dropping their bombs, shooting their guns, and firing their rockets. And the ground troops really had a lot of confidence in the old SPAD because the plane is stable. It really is a stable platform for ordnance delivery, and the pilots, of course, were outstanding, and they could really get their ordnance on the target. However, the primary mission is the Rescue Combat Air Patrol, or RESCAP, which we do escort helicopters into North Vietnam to suppress ground fire while the helicopter is in transit.
Well, that's a pretty big morale factor for the pilots that go down over there, too, because when they go down, they like to see the SPADs up above protecting them from being captured, at least long enough until the helo can get there. And a SPAD has got a lot of firepower, can stay there a long time, and protect them for a long time accurately until the helo can come and pick them up.
After more than 20 years, the huge old bird saw its last combat action in Vietnam.
Just south of Hanoi, as a rest cap. After rendezvous, we will proceed as a division, rendezvous point, to the vicinity of the Hourglass River. Check in with the North Star destroyer, pick up our helicopters, at which time we'll split 2 sections. I'd like one section just south of the Red River mouth to pick up anybody coming out in trouble. From the time we cross the coast, I want to get the helo just as high as possible. There's no missile activity reported this far.
There came that inevitable moment when it was the last battle and the last war for the Sky Raider. When that final battle was over, the proud old Navy fighting bird folded her wings and called it a day. She came home from Vietnam in style. Like most great planes, the Sky Raider was created out of need and necessity. But even her most ardent supporters in the 40s never dreamed the SPAD would be around to celebrate her 20th operational birthday. Combat aircraft just don't stay around that long, very often. Yet, more than 2 decades had gone by since she sailed on the maiden voyage of the USS Coral Sea. Now the old Sky Raider was coming home from her final cruise with the same squadron and aboard the same carrier. Now that final moment was at hand. Bureau number 35300 taxied past the side boys. The crowd stood at attention. And the last Navy Sky Raider was formally piped over. The heroic memory of the Sky Raider will long be recalled and relived in the hearts and minds of the fighting men of the United States Navy.